Hey, fellow investors, welcome to another episode of Ritter on Real Estate, where we teach you how to passively invest like a pro. Today, my guest is Gary MacDermid, and he is the president of US Private Equities. He's formerly he's a retired Navy. Sorry, let me start that again because I didn't realize if you were an officer or not. I didn't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, I'm a Naval Officer. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I assumed, I just didn't want to say the wrong
No
thing.
worries.
So
I was both, but
you're
I
both.
enlisted then. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
Uh,
Hello, fellow investors. Welcome to another episode of Ritter on Real Estate, where we teach you how to passively invest like a pro. Today, my guest is Gary MacDermid, and Gary is the president of US Private Equities. He's a former naval officer who transitioned into being an engineer, and then transitioned now into what he's calling the cash flow engineer. And so I'm kind of interested to dig into that and unpack that a little bit. So, Gary, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So before we get into everything, let's start at the top. Just give people a sense of who you are and how you got to where you are today.
So you're right. As you just mentioned, I did get my start in the U.S. Navy. I really had no idea what to expect because I wanted to go to college, but my father woke me up one day, senior year, and he basically told me that he had bad news, and that bad news was there was no money for college. However, the good news was he had a plan, and that was to drive me to the recruiting station. And he opened the door and he said, "Take your pick: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. I recommend Navy so you can see the world." And so, not knowing anything, I chose Navy. And the reason I bring that up is because, ironically, that was the way that I got my real estate career started. It was actually just after boot camp. There was a group of 20 of us in an A school class, which is the first school after boot camp. And there was a master chief who's a higher rank just giving us advice. And what he told really was probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I've ever had that made a difference in my life. And that was, buy real estate everywhere you get stationed, and you'll make more money than the Navy will ever pay you. Now, when I heard that at 18, I had no idea what that meant, but the guy sounded very convincing, and it sounded cool to just, buy a house or buy real estate. And so that's what I focused on. It took me a couple of years to figure out how to save money, but thankfully around that time, it was a lot easier to get lending, as many of you may remember. And so that was how I learned and started with passive income investing.
Gotcha. So that was a big pivot point for you. And I think it's funny. I was just thinking about how you have those points in your life where somebody comes in, gives you a piece of advice. You got to decide whether or not whether or not you take it. Right. But you were able to figure it out. And how long did it take you or I guess, how many houses did you end up accumulating? How many places were you stationed, and how long did that take you?
Yeah. So, I bought my first house at 21 in Seattle. Then I bought another one in Hawaii, and when I was stationed at Pearl. And then I also I spent a lot when Pearl. I spent a lot of time overseas, and so I actually bought a one of those groundbreaking condos in the Philippines. It was actually I bought it before it was built, so it was the first time I'd ever tried one of those pre-constructions. But in some of the countries overseas where they rely on foreign investments, they really put together an attractive package. And so what they did, I remember, I was in my mid 20s. I just handed a stack of checks. They filled them out and dated them every month for a few years until the building would be built. And it was almost like a pre-installment sale. But when you take the risk and knowing that building was going to be the tallest residential building in that country in the central business district, and the reputation of the architect and some of those things, I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. I didn't consider myself an expert, but I at least did look at some of those things. I mean, there were so many similar opportunities out there, but that was kind of the first time that I tried international investing, and it was a little bit different, but that worked out well. The checks got deposited every month, and the building was built. I got to see it. It was really amazing, and to this day, it still is one of the nicer buildings in the country. So that was kind of how I got my feet wet, and then everything after that is when I had to really study and scale and turn it into a business. But that was the beginnings.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, you grew pretty quickly from kind of being like, "Oh, I don't really know how to buy a house or even really save to buy a house to say, well, we're going to buy a pre-construction condo in the Philippines. Right. So I think there's like a big leap there. So I know you spend a lot of time talking about mindset. So I'm curious to ask you, how does your mindset evolve over that time? And how do you kind of get to the point where you're willing to take that risk? You feel like you've kind of done the research, and then, kind of as you move on from there.
Yeah, right. That mindset was huge. I mean, mindset was pretty much everything, because you have to remember, I didn't believe I could do any of these things when I was when I was forced to enlist in the Navy after high school. I didn't really think that I could ever have my own business. I didn't really think that I could. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know what passive income was. So mindset was huge, and there were three basic mindset shifts that I had to make. And the first one was just visualization. I remember, I was told at a young age, you have to, you can put, if you do it, you can, if you put your mind, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. But really what I didn't know is the visualization piece. And that is, the question that would be asked is, do you have to believe it to see it, or do you see it and then you need to see it before you can believe it? And so that mindset shift for me was, a lot of times I had self-limiting beliefs. Like, I didn't believe that I could do a lot of things. And so the moment that I started to kind of open my mind, like, other people are doing this, it doesn't have to be just a small subset. Like, almost anybody can do it. And then sure, sooner or later, I was able to, like, basically just open my mind that, I could do anything. I could really believe what I was told as a child, was that if you put your mind to it. So part of that was just, you have to open the door and accept the fact that there's a possibility. Then the other couple mindset shifts that I had to make were scarcity to abundance. Along with the self-limiting beliefs, there was also just that mindset of scarcity. We're going to run out of money. We got to save it. And then when you start looking at it, like, just even recently, right, that we've got more money in the world right now, and we're printing more and more of it. And so that just means that there's more out there. So instead of looking at, like, cutting costs, just look at it as investments. Or, if I have to pay if I want to learn how to play golf, and I have to I could learn on my own, I could read, or I could just find the top instructor and pay, and that's a cost. But I wouldn't do things like that before, because I didn't have my mind right. And so when I started understanding that it was, shifting from scarcity to abundance, that's when stuff started happening. That's when, it took a lot of the pressure of worrying about money and costs, and just worrying about, how am I going to build my revenue, or how am I going to build my top line? How am I going to build my portfolio? And the sooner you focus on that, instead of worrying about costs and bottom line and some of that stuff, it may sound counterintuitive, but psychologically it was more relaxing, and it just helped me power through a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, I've definitely had to go through my own journey with limiting beliefs and that scarcity to abundance mindset. I think when you set out as an entrepreneur, which you now have, especially, you have to have, the only way you grow is through an abundance mindset, right? And the idea, like you mentioned, the idea of cost versus investment, right? I think that's so important, because if you're only focused on, oh, this is going to cost this much, we can't do it, then how are you ever going to grow? How is your business ever going to grow, right? You have to have that faith, like faith over fear mentality is like another way to think about it, right? You got to have the faith that you do this and it's going to bear fruit, and it's going to, and the revenue is going to come in, right? And I think that's really difficult to grasp. I think it's a really difficult concept for people.
Absolutely. I mean, it took years. It wasn't easy. And it really just took being around people that were like-minded, and being around people that thought the same way. Because spending time in the military and the government, sometimes, there's negativity, and it's contagious. So as I started to make these mindset shifts, it was very important. Just like, you have a support group. I don't really necessarily look at it as a support group. It was just that the less negative things and that you hear in a day-to-day activity, the better off it is to kind of power you. And when you start hanging around people that are motivating, positive, and just kind of pushing you, that really makes a difference as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked about the limiting beliefs. We talked about the abundance versus scarcity. Was there a third one?
So I mean, there's a third mindset shift that I had to make, and it was just, and I don't know how much of it was just a mindset as more of a strategy, and it was just kind of as we just talked about, eliminating negative energy from your life.
Mm-hmm.
The other mindset or strategy that I looked at was just kind of positioning yourself for success. So, like I mentioned, if you wanted to learn how to play golf really well, you would seek out somebody that was really good, had the track record. And so I had to do that
Ah,
with business and real estate as well. It was just, I learned, from a master chief at a young age. I don't know whether or not he was an expert, but he pointed me in the right direction. But when you really want to perfect the game and you want to get really master it, you really have to start looking for people that have that track record, that have been in business, that have done what you wanted to do and more. And so that was sort of the last piece that I sometimes look at as a mindset shift is just sort of curating the places that you're going to be, the events that you're going to be at, the people that you're going to meet, because you have a lot of control of that.
yeah.
If you want to do, even if you're just looking at prospecting, I mean, if you're prospecting, are you going to do that at like a shopping mall or, a dollar store? Are you going to try to do that at a country club or somewhere where you're more likely to get somebody of the caliber that you would want as an investor to do business with? And so that sort of shift into just positioning yourself for success is what I kind of look at as a strategy or a mindset shift that kind of helped. It was another piece that helped me to be successful in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, and the takeaway I really had from what you said was you talk about, finding people who have been successful and either, creating it, maybe it's mentorship or coaching relationship or, in some way following them and kind of the same idea, like the Tony Robbins idea, right? Success leaves clues, right? And so don't reinvent the wheel. There's probably people out there that have done this or similar things, and you can kind of short circuit that path by just understanding what they've done and learning from their mistakes, right?
Absolutely. And that was a big key is, to reinvent the wheel every time you want to do something or get better. It was just that we don't have enough hours in the day. And so that's the most efficient way that I found is to learn from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's powerful because I think everything starts with mindset, right? And I think you've outlined, I think, three areas to really focus on to make you successful, right? These limiting beliefs and how you get over them. You started talking about visualization, right? Believing you could get there, seeing yourself there kind of before you were there, right? I think is a really powerful tactic. And then you talked about, the scarcity versus abundance, which I think you have to be willing to invest. Otherwise, if you're not doing things differently, how are you ever going to have different outcomes? Right. And then lastly, finding mentorship as is one way to position yourself to be successful. Right. But it also sounds like, you just being thoughtful about your business, putting yourself in the right markets, putting yourself around the right people, just in general, I think is kind of these takeaways. So I think those are really powerful things that can help anybody be successful.
Right. Thank you. That's definitely want to share anything that I can.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. I guess kind of propelling off of that. I know you talked a little bit, or we had talked a little before about kind of your goal setting formula. You talked about how you're an engineer and you kind of maybe reverse engineered this formula for creating set. Can you share that with the folks and maybe it can help some others out there?
Yeah, so I am an engineer, so I do like to make systems and processes, probably overthink things, but I've sometimes been asked, if from other folks, just, how is it, like sometimes it might be something as simple as, wanting to start an exercise routine or, whatever it is like, how are you able to just pick something and then just do it? Because I've my background, I was in the military. I did a lot of advanced things there, and then I was an engineer and I did design for nuclear power plants, and so there was a lot of complexity there. But how do you transition from one way, then do another thing, and then go, start a real estate. And so sometimes people would ask, and really it just, I did kind of break it down to a little bit of a system, but it does require the mindset shifts. And so that first one, the 5 steps that I looked at, we kind of talked about them already without really going into specifics. Visualization. So actually visualize what it is that you're trying to do. Actually see yourself doing it and understand what it looks like. What does it taste like? What does it smell like? Then the next one is to seek counsel. So, and the way that, if you want to write a book, and you ask, maybe your uncle or your parents, like, hey, I'm thinking about writing a book. Can you give me some advice? That's not really seeking counsel, because odds are they haven't probably written a book, and they may talk you out of it. So when I say seek counsel, that really means to just find somebody that's actually done it. Find somebody that's done it at a high level. Ask them, what does it take? I'm thinking about doing it. Have that educated discussion.
Mhm.
And then what you do after you've visualized, you see what you want, and you've sought the counsel with somebody that can actually lay it out. They may not be somebody that can help you day in and day out, but they could certainly tell you how difficult it is or what you might need to, start, where you would start. That's when you work backwards. So you set that goal for whatever it is. It has to be specific, measurable, achievable. I remember when I was looking to actually transition and retire from my career and start my own business, my goal was to retire, and I actually put December 31st of that year, and that was specific and measurable
Yep.
and time sensitive. So do that and then work backwards. So if you wanted to, say, read 10 books a year or whatever it is, you could take that number, how many pages there are, and you could divide that by the number of days. So the key is to take that goal, break it down into actionable steps that you would do either weekly or daily, and then set the bar low, not so low, but you want to set it low so that when you set that target, whether it's a daily target or weekly target, if it's real estate, you want to, say, make one offer a day, 7 days a week. You want to set that bar low enough that it on your weakest day, you can still achieve that target. But at the aggregate of doing that day in and day out, week in and week out, it will get you to your goal. So that was the other thing, is to actually take that and dissect it, work backwards. And then the next thing is to commit to it. A lot of times people have that goal, it's in your head, you don't tell anybody. And sometimes, like, I'm guilty of this. I didn't want to tell anybody because I was afraid if I told somebody and then I failed, I would look like a failure. But really that's counterproductive, because that means that you're not committed, you don't believe in that goal. And so the sooner you take that goal out of the fourth dimensional mind and put it down in a two-dimensional space and write it down and even share it with somebody, that's when you start feeling that level of commitment. And then the last thing, if you've made it through all of that, and you might find it helpful. I mean, we're all human, so you could do all that, but still you are going to have those weekdays. And so that's when it's important to have an accountability partner, ideally somebody that is trying to do something similar, maybe not the same thing, but it would be helpful if they're doing something similar to you. If you're a real estate investor, maybe having somebody a real estate investor as well, but you want them to be maybe a little bit further ahead so that you look up to them a little bit, and that there's a relationship where on your weekday, when you're wondering if you're going to make that one offer because you're just tired for whatever it is, or you had a bad day, they're going to hold you accountable. And that was really the 5-step process that I used, and that has worked for me ever since.
I like that. I like that. So for step one, visualize where you want to go, right? Have a clear path. Step two is seek counsel. So seeking advice on from somebody who's been there on what it really means to get there, right? What it really takes to get there. Then you can make an informed decision. Step three, you actually set the goal, but then step it backwards into individual actionable daily, weekly steps, right? So set the annual goal, but say, okay, what does that mean for me daily, weekly? How do I accomplish that? That's one area where with reading. So I had a goal a couple of years ago. I really wanted to start reading more. I just couldn't find the time, right? Because I thought about it as, I got to set an hour or 2 hours aside to read. And that was one place where I just started reading, for even just 10 minutes a day. And, but over time, like you said, the 10 minutes adds up. It's, maybe it's a chapter a day, a few pages a day. I mean, it adds up over time. And all of a sudden I had read all these books. And so, I mean, that was just one little place where like, I really saw the impact of breaking that down into, like you said, what, on your worst day, what can you accomplish? And in aggregate, that adds up. So I thought that was really powerful. And then commit publicly. I love that. And the last two are kind of like accountability, right? Commit publicly to it, and then find somebody to hold you accountable, somebody that you can, kind of be your cheerleader, or maybe your drill sergeant if you need it on those tough days.
Right. I prefer the drill sergeant approach just from being in the military, but
Yeah, there you go.
it works.
That's right. So no, I think that's a great framework. I think that's something that anybody can pick up and do. And I like how you broke that down. So I appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
No worries. Yeah.
So let's shift gears now to what you're doing at US Private Equities. Tell us a little bit about the business and how, I mean, you've gone from Navy to you talked about you're an engineer, you're designing nuclear power plants, but now you're running I think it started as a real estate business. Now it's even maybe beyond that, but tell us about what you're doing, but talk about how real estate kind of led you through this path.
Right. So, I mean, real estate was the backbone to everything that I do. I mean, having that passive income to not have to worry about it really was what able to help me to transition from the military and also from being an engineer. And then as far as what we do now, I mean, we just refine the model. I mean, I learned from somebody that had been doing this passive income model that we use for over 30 years in multiple markets and also internationally. And so what we do is we just, and this is often, when you look at any business, it's what problem do you solve and what need do you serve? And so when you look at the way that we modeled our real estate investment and the way that we build portfolios, we're trying to solve a problem and serve two different audiences. We're trying to solve or three different audiences, actually, if you look at the home seller, because we are acquiring homes. So we're solving a need there where somebody wants to sell or may need to sell. That's one audience that we'll serve. So we're buying a property, we're acquiring a property, a home, and we're going to convert that into a home that we're going to help a family that really wants to own their own home, but currently can't because of credit or other reasons. So now that's another audience that we're going to serve. And so a lot of times, 50% of people or more nowadays that want to own their own home can't. And so what we do is we're solving that problem by offering, we use a lot of rent to own or lease options and sometimes installment sales, where we're going to be able to help that audience and that family that right now would not believe that they could own that home. And so we set them off on that journey to home ownership. And that's a pretty powerful way. We've helped a lot of families that didn't think that they'd be able to own their own home. And that's powerful. And that's what kind of helps is the fuel for this. So when you break it down into that, what need do you serve? The business, the most successful businesses, if they're solving big problems and serving big needs, it really helps drive that business. And so that's kind of the way we look at it. Then the third audience would be, we are having to monetize it and make some type of passive income. So with the way that we structure this, we're able to also generate a return. Rents right now are higher than mortgages. And so by offering a rental, that's going to have a bit of a spread over the mortgage. And there's other powerful ways that we monetize too. There's tax benefits, cost segregation studies. We treat single family like multifamily in that we can do some of those advanced cost segregation studies and things like that can really minimize the taxes while maximize the income. There's a whole series of that, but that would be a separate show. Just in general, what we do is we solve problems and serve needs. And then beyond that, we've actually started trying to help with some of the affordable housing. We're also doing some land development. We're doing manufactured. We're looking into modular and tiny homes this year as well. Mm-hmm. But we have started developing some lots, just simple right now. And then we also invest in other businesses. So we've done some angel investing and are also looking at partnering or even doing some acquisitions as well. that's just how we've kind of evolved from doing real estate, but just keeping those business concepts and just maintain, looking at other ways to have passive income.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So the initial passive income you had from those rentals that you bought as you were moving from place to place in the Navy kind of fueled your ability to go off and start now this bigger, more focused business and help a broader group of people, serve a broader group of people, as you said, including, a number of folks, from the people wanting to buy houses to wanting to sell houses to investors wanting to invest in these type of properties. And so that real estate really kind of started as that catalyst, it sounds like, but by ultimately giving you that freedom to have the choice to kind of go to the next level.
Right. And that was a big part of it. Without having that first passive income to be able to step away, that was the game changer. And that really, I feel, was the first step, and will always be a part of anything that I do.
Mm-hmm. Really cool, Gary. I think it's a great story, and appreciate you sharing all the mindset pieces as well, and how you got yourself to the point to believe you could do all this, right? Because I mean, I think that's a pretty incredible leap from a guy as 18, 19 years old joining the Navy to now running this business and doing all these different things and breaking into angel investing and starting to do a real private equity company. So very cool story. So as we start to wind things down, I want to take you through our keys to success round. I got 4 questions I want to ask you. The first one is, if you were going to invest passively with somebody else, you were going to invest in somebody else's real estate deal, and you could only ask them one question, what would that one question be?
That would be easy for me. I would just ask for references.
Gotcha.
And
Yep.
that's basically, I mean, I could ask all the questions in the world, but track record, and I mean, that's pretty easy to find. So that would be, if it was only one question,
Yeah.
I would just, that would be my fail safe, would just be to ask for references.
That's great. What are you most proud of in your career?
I'm most proud of just, I'm a civil servant at heart, the military service, and just, I'm most proud of what I had accomplished there, and just being part of something that's bigger than myself.
Very cool. Yeah. And thank you for your service. That's incredible. And as you're thinking about it, what is a book that everybody should read?
So as far as one book, I mean, if I only had to pick one book, I would say I wouldn't, that book might be different for everyone, because for me, I look at reading as just a way to help with those mindset shifts. That was very powerful for me, because it's hard to just find somebody that would just kind of talk you through it. So I would just say, there's a lot of books out there. There's books that can help you better. And there's books like, I mean, a couple books, and I know that's kind of not the exact question. So, I mean, I'm going to share it, and then I'll go back to answer it directly.
Sure.
But a couple of the books that helped me one of them was How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. And that was very important for me for negotiation. And then there was books like 3 Feet from Gold or Think and Grow Rich that help with the mindset shift. So I don't want to say any one of those books. I don't even know that those books would be good for you, but I will say that that if there's one book that you should read, it's one that's going to help get you to that first step of visualization. So if look at books out there and just vet them, and just find one that you feel would help you to open your mind to be able to take advantage of any of the opportunities that might be in front of you, that you may not have said yes to if you didn't read that book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you said there is just really interesting about, there's opportunities in front of you that you might not have said yes to. Because I think we are presented with opportunities often. I mean, no matter what we're in, right? I think oftentimes, if you haven't opened up your mindset, right, then you just automatically kind of say no. You're just, oh no, couldn't do that. I'm too busy, or this or that. I think first we go to excuses, and I think that was something that I really noticed as my mindset's opened up, and I've recognized that, just like you, I think I can do just about anything. And the amount of opportunities that start coming in, I mean, seem incredible. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe these opportunities were here all the time. Maybe I just wasn't receiving them. I wasn't open to it. And I think that was kind of trippy for me to realize. It's like, wow, like there really are things out there if you're just listening and if you're just open to it.
Right. And that's why everybody has a reason why that maybe they're limiting themselves or limiting the opportunity. So if you kind of think and maybe can have an idea of what that is, then you might be able to go find that one book that I think you should read.
Yeah. So visualize what the book is that you should read, and then go find that book.
Go
I
find
like
it.
that.
Yeah.
That's right up your alley. Perfect. Well, and I appreciate you giving us a few, and we'll make sure those books are linked below so people can check those out. But also, I think, yeah, finding the right one for you. Lastly, Gary, what is your number one key to success?
Number one key to success is just mindset. I mean, the mindset is, everything that we do, even when especially when you start getting away from the engineering side and you start getting into the real side or the business side. I mean, I believe that it's 80% mindset and maybe 20% skills and abilities, and you can hire those or partner with those. So that is the key to success is just the mindset. And when I meet with people today, I can kind of see, right. I can see where, if there's a spectrum of mindset, because I know I was on the worst end of the spectrum, and it's pretty easy to tell, where along that spectrum we are when we meet folks.
Sure.
And so that for me is the number one key to success is just changing the mind. I mean, positivity versus negativity, glass half full, glass empty. I mean, those are all things that our mind can control.
Absolutely. And I think that's an awesome place to wrap things up, because I think you're right. That is the beginning of everything. So Gary, thank you so much for coming on today. If folks want to get in touch with you, they want to see more about what you're doing, how can they reach out to you?
So, So that's a good question. I'm on LinkedIn, Gary MacDermid. I also have a website, GaryMacDermid.com. And if you go GaryMacDermid.com/free gift, you will get that 5 steps kind of boiled down just for you to kind of, if you just want to brush up on visualize, seek counsel, work backwards, set targets, commit, and find the accountability partner, that have a little cheat sheet there. But those are pretty much the easiest ways to find me.
Awesome. And we'll make sure all that's available below. So guys, go click down and check Gary out. And Gary, thank you once again for coming on the show, and we hope you have a great rest of the day.
Appreciate it. Really. Thank you for having me. It was a great podcast, and look forward to working with you in the future.